What I want to do is really run an advertisement for what's in your book, and it's the mindsets, behaviors, and knowledge information that's in there that everyone will have. And when I talk about that, I'm going to focus primarily on the mindset piece of the deliverable that's being shared on behalf of the CAQ with everyone, because that's a nuance that we don't talk often enough about, but we've talked a lot as a steering committee. You know, when I talk about mindsets and behaviors and knowledge, when we talk about behaviors, that's how it avails itself, how people behave, how it shows in one's actions. We all get that. And when we talk about knowledge, facts, information, we often focus a lot on that. But we don't talk as much about mindsets. And obviously, mindsets help inform how a student or someone in lifelong learning in this profession think. You know, how they're thinking about and apply some judgment to what they're looking at. So for just a couple moments here before we begin the panel, I want to talk about the mindsets. And there's 4 mindsets that we highlight in the pamphlet. Excuse me. The first is the analytic mindset. And we talk about analytics a lot in the profession. We talk about information and knowledge. But for purposes of this, we say, okay, make sure that the mindset is a critical thinking mindset, exploratory, and really understanding what to do and think and judgment applied to the analytics. And if you go through the deliverable that's in your book, and I won't read to you everything we have in there, or the CAQ, I should say, has published in there, I want to make sure that we talk about not the facts and information about analytics, but we start to have conversations more about the mindset around that. And then global mindset, as the world continues to shrink, obviously, with the multinational world and corporations that auditors work with, you know, being sensitive and knowledgeable about different cultures and different countries, application of different matters in this profession. It's important that people are inclusive in their thinking and diverse in their thought. So it's important that someone in the profession approaches a lot of these things with a global mindset based on, you know, research and all the things that are, again, in that pamphlet. I won't go through all that. And then there's 2 others, a growth mindset. You know, we often see this is a lifelong learning profession. We seek lifelong learning professionals who embark on this journey and really looking to grow and expand and evolve. We talk about the future of the profession. We talk about the evolution of the profession, what's out in front. The truth is, as we all know, and having been in this profession for over 30 years, we are evolving as we sit in this room. We have been, and we will continue to evolve. But having students understand and appreciate that it's a growth-oriented industry and profession lifts all, and really also allows them the best opportunity, not only during their college and university years to grasp and soak in all that's available to them, but post-academic careers to continue to be growth-oriented in what's available to them and how they can continue to deliver better services to the world in this profession. And finally, innovative mindset. Really, you know, we'll talk about, I'm sure, millennials on our panel. It always comes up. And when we talk about innovative mindset, I have this conversation a lot with my colleagues to make sure that those of us who've been in the profession for a longer time, that we have an innovative mindset. And we heard some people talk earlier about, you know, starting fresh, being innovative thinkers in what we do. And the mindset, again, informs what someone does with the knowledge and facts and ultimately changes the longer-term behaviors. So I would just again ask everyone is to take a look at that information that the CAQ has provided everyone, and also encourage students to the academia in the room to leverage the roadmap that's in there, to become familiar with it. There's a roadmap that helps link to the courses or activities or experiences that might help fill gaps in some of those areas and critical components of the profession going forward. And to the professors in the room, because I'm always I'm also always grateful to professors because of the role that my professor played with me. If anyone needs a cup of coffee or a ride to the airport or anything I can do to help you while you're here today, please let me know. I want to pay it forward. Thank you very much.
We have a lot to accomplish today, and just so excited to have this panel with Lora, Jeff, Sara, and Scott. So thank you for joining us. If you think about the growth mindset, I love Carol Dwyer's book. I love it, I love it. I just think we don't spend enough time as individuals thinking about how do you get to yes? How do you get to what it is that you're looking for? And Carol Dwyer's book is just phenomenal and allows you to think about accountability in a different way. And so I think as we think about what's happening in the next 5 years with these incoming freshmen, what's going to happen with our 2023 students, and what is this outside in? What does it look like, and what can we talk about? We've come up with some questions today that I hope that you'll not only enjoy, but you'll be able to take back with you, because that's what this is all about, being relevant, being able to have conversations, and being able to stay in the thick of it, but to also bring ourselves above it to say what's going on. One of the most interesting things that was said earlier was 2023, and I wanted to give you some facts here. We need to remember something about these incoming freshmen who'll be entering our profession, our beloved profession, in the fall of 2023. They don't know how anything happened before cell phones and the internet. They've never lived in a world with monthly texting limits. They were born the same year as the PlayStation 2 and Game Boy Advance came out. Star Wars was never a trilogy. So if you just think about that, the landscape that they are growing up in, it is at their fingertips. We have to help them, professors, professionals, we have to help them understand the touch, the importance of conversation, the importance of sharing words and information with others. But this 2023 is going to bring an amazing opportunity for us if we can get into this innovative mindset. What else is out there? How do you get the results that you want, given the obstacles of today? So with that, we want to spend some time on the outside in and really start with the capital markets. So Jeff, I'd like to pose this first question to you. So you have quite a distinguished background. Just look at his bio. Just look at his bio. He served on the White House Council of Economic Advisors and worked at the National Bureau of Economic Research, hence why he's in academia. So from that perspective, and as an audit committee member, what role do you think the financial statement audit plays in the capital markets today?
So first of all, thank you for allowing me to be on the panel. You know, I actually go back to when I was in my PhD program. I'm an economist, not an accountant. That'll probably become clear if it's not already. And we were required in our first year to take an economic history course. And the main takeaway that I really internalized from that whole course was that over the last several centuries, if you want to see where economic growth took place, you look at the capital markets. And if you wonder why I'm starting with economic growth, it's because despite this sort of national funk that we seem to be in, there's actually a tremendous amount of good news out there in the world. Declines in global poverty rates, declines in infant mortality rates, and so forth. Most of the factors that we use as economists to think about social well-being have actually been really on the march globally over the last several decades. That is a result of global economic growth. That growth, again, comes when you have capital markets that help you to allocate capital to high-value uses. It's not the only thing, obviously. Human capital, education, et cetera, are very important in all that as well. So you talk to most economists, we're going to tell you that capital markets are crucial to society's well-being. Full stop. So what role do financial statements and audits play in that? Well, strong financial markets have to start with people trusting the information that they have to work with when making decisions about how to allocate resources, what investments to take. And you know, the world we're working in today with all this data that's out there and people can grab data from just about any source, I think there is still a really valuable role to ensure that the information that the company is putting out about its core financials is verified by a trusted source. Even if somebody's using that information before it's been audited and before it's released, they have the confidence in knowing that there's a whole governance and incentive process in place to make sure that that data is accurate. So I don't think it's a very far step at all from good audit practice to declining infant mortality rates. I mean, it's really that, it's that important.
So very basic, just to have this trust in the businesses that are actually generating all the capital that's out there. So extremely important. And whether it's the audit of today or the audit of tomorrow, we're still going to need that third-party attestation, or that third-party review of that information. What those audit reports will look like, as you heard from the first panel, will continue to evolve and change, but who knows what will happen 5 years, 7 years from now. So thank you, Jeff. Scott, as you think about your previous role at E&Y, you were the firm's private equity assurance leader. Scary. What were those clients' perspective of the audit of companies in which they invested?
Yeah, thanks, Stella. It may be even scarier. I actually spent 6 years as an investment banker and in private equity. So I've chosen this as a profession, though, so that should tell you something about that one. Yeah, no, I've got a really good perspective on that, and I was in public accounting, left to go into that, and then came back. And one of the things I noticed when I went into the investment banking and private equity was how important the financial statements are in every aspect of what you do. I mean, when you think about it, you know, they're investing not for themselves, but on behalf of others. Okay, and so the quality of that information, I mean, that's what they're there to do, is understand the quality of the earnings, understand the quality of the financial position of those companies, and they're making really important decisions off of that. They really rely on auditors as the starting point. Now, they're able to get to more in-depth information at certain points in time. They're able to get, you know, sometimes non-public information that helps them dive into it, but they're always coming back to the audit as their place to start. In fact, when they finish, okay, they're looking at the audit for any purchase price adjustments or any changes in the economics. So as a subset of the capital markets, I think it's one of the most important components of what they do. And just again, when I went in there, it was kind of interesting to see an advantage that I had, even over others that had come out of corporate, because I understood that so well.
That's great. Thank you, Scott. And as you think about just innovation in its purest form, Sara, I'm looking, Lora, sorry. Sara, if you look out 5 years, do you see the audit becoming more relevant? And if so, why?
I do see the audit becoming more relevant because we live in a world of massive amounts of data. And when we think about what we do in the audit, we're auditing information. And so, you know, there's a new article every day saying the blockchain is going to take over audit, we're going to validate every transaction. I might be happy to know that every purchase and sale that Walmart made was validated, but I still don't have any idea what that means. And so there's still the process of creating the financial information, taking and synthesizing that, and then us coming in and evaluating, okay, how has management pulled this together? How have they created something meaningful from it? And as investors, how is management giving investors the right types of information that they can utilize and make decisions on? So I think that when we think of the audit of the future, the relevancy is in us actually providing that confidence in the information, not in weeding through all the data that's out there to say, here's the packet, here's what you want to know, and here's how you can know it's correct.
And so too, the relevance, as you think about it as professors, is look at what's happening with all the accounting standards just from the first panel. So we talk about the relevance of the audit, but it really is dependent on that lens of GAAP. So what is the story of the financial statements, and how was that GAAP actually applied and put in place? And even how is our audit report changing, and what are those critical audit matters, and how is it all going to link? So thank you for that. I think we continue to find ways to understand the importance and relevance of the audit, and we still today have that expectations gap that not everybody understands why that is. But if we think about more the types of company information that's out there and the types of information that investors and stakeholders want to have assurance around, Scott and Sara, I mean, what do you think about the other types of company information that somebody might say, I want more assurance on this?
Okay, I'll give you a really simple example. I think it's trust, right? And so when we go out, I personally choose, I want to be responsible to the environment. I want our kids to have a great place to play. I was looking into a company that sells recycled paper products, and they're completely recycled, and then they give back a certain proportion of what they sell into developing sanitation systems in other countries. And I was like, this is a great product. I might, yeah, this is going to cost me a little more to buy this, but it's probably going to be worth it. And I was just looking through their, on their website and some of their social media, and there were people saying, yeah, but well, how do they know they really give stuff back? How do we know it's really recycled? And they had answers in there. They said, well, this is a charity partner we work with. Here's their report where they're providing some comfort that they actually got money from us. Not all the way to a level of an assurance yet, but we're seeing that pull from the consumer saying, you know what, I want to make a difference. I want to be able to make, maybe it's socially responsible, maybe it's, that's just one example, but as the auditors, as we look at, yeah, we have the historical financial information, but we also have, there's non-GAAP measures. They talked about with revenue earlier. Can we provide more evidence or more assurance around, is management using these in a way that is responsible, that they're not changing it every quarter based on what's going to be the right answer or look a little bit better, providing framework around that, and then moving into the social side. I won't even talk a lot about cyber, but I'll throw that out there as another piece of the future.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And I love the words confidence and trust in terms of our brand within audit and assurance, period. And I think when you look back over, and I think Dave said something about the last 20 or 30 or 40 years, we're going to do things different the next 5 years. I'd probably extend that to about the last 150 years. Okay, we're going to see more change in the next 5 years. And one of the things I think we even move beyond financial entirely is we've been very focused on financial statement audits, right? Starting and ending with the general ledger. But you think about all the other information out there that requires reliability, confidence, trust, assurance. Now you're talking about taking the profession in an entirely different direction. I know we'll touch on it later on with, what are your students going to do? Are they going to have a job, et cetera, et cetera. But when you really think about it from a lens of opportunity, it's not just going to be on financial information. It could be in the medical field. Okay, around the reliability of the medical information, or we could sit here and all have fun listing out the 20 different things, but I really believe the industry as a whole, right, has an opportunity to really brand itself around confidence and trust and providing assurance in a number of different ways. Very bullish, right, on what we have the opportunity to do.
And you need people in order for that to actually all come to fruition.
Yeah. AI is not going to do that.
Right, robots and AI, they can do a lot of things. But this personal touch is not going to happen. So if you think about just that personal touch, and just think about our millennials and our Gen Zers and whatever the next generation is going to be called, Laura, what do you think? They put a great deal of importance on wanting to work in areas that have purpose, in areas that are meaningful and where they can truly make a difference. So how do the firm's recruiters actually stress the role of our profession and the audit and the capital markets? How do they bring that all together?
Excuse me. Yeah, it's really about making sure they understand the context that we play with the capital markets and the mindfulness and how we enable the capital markets to do what they do and really drive that home, because as they go through the academic courses and they understand that, I think we're uniquely positioned as organizations to remind them how that fits into it. And a lot of questions come up about the innovative, the role that innovation overlays with them. And you always have to put yourself in the shoes of the person you're talking to and remember what they see as what we might say is innovation, they know as that's all they know. So, talking about how everything we do is critically important and will continue to be important is something they don't know, because a lot of times they're having a conversation with somebody who's been in the profession and we're talking about an arc that they have no context to. So but yet if you stop and get grounded in, let's be very clear, the role we play now, the role we'll play in the future, and how it's also critically purposeful to the capital markets is important, and emphasizing that in different ways, and how even somebody coming out of school, they play a role in that, and making sure they understand that, and we explore that. So.
And that's really important for all of us, is having people who understand how they contribute. How are they contributing to this process? How are they contributing to the profession? How are they contributing to lifelong learning? And you do make a difference when you work in a profession and when you educate people that are going to work in this profession, and it is about confidence, trust, reliance, and relevance. It's a reliability and relevance, just amazing. So Jeff, as we kind of wrap up the capital markets piece, what role do you think our college professors play in driving the message about how the capital markets work and the role that the profession plays?
Yeah. Well, I'm a little biased because I think educators have an important role in everything that we do. You know, I do think, going back to your point about today's young people, and by the way, our millennials have all pretty much graduated as of this last year, if they're on a normal timing. So we're already now into the Generation Z, which they haven't figured out what they're really going to call them yet. But on this purpose-driven idea, I think helping people to understand that accounting specifically, auditing specifically, but just business in general, does make this enormous impact on the world. I mean, I talk to our students all the time about how I think of business as a noble profession. It doesn't get portrayed that often that way in the media. And drawing these links is, you know, maybe you found it compelling, maybe you found it crazy that I could draw a link from doing an audit to, you know, improving global health outcomes, but helping people to understand that and their place in the world, I think is critically important regardless of what class you're teaching.
That's great. So you continue to hear how important your role is in educating our incoming freshmen and probably anybody who's interested in being a lifelong learner. And that kind of, if you think about education, just not in a vacuum, but just out there, it really makes me think about innovation. Because the way that we communicate today, the way that we build syllabi today, the way that we even put case studies together today is just so different than when I was in school, probably so different than when others were in school. And I think, Christopher, you had mentioned earlier, you wish that we had done some of these studies, these cross-service case studies that really helped us see that it's not just about the number. It's about the psychology, it's about the economics, it's about everything. So as we move into innovations in the audit, I'm going to go to you, Scott. So you are the Assurance, Innovation, and Digital Leader for EY. What a title.
It's a good title.
It's fun. It's pretty cool.
It's a lot more fun than private equity assurance.
But it's digital, so I think that kind of leads straight into innovation. So you must be giving a great deal of thought about where the audit is going and where it might be 5 years from now. Mm-hmm. What do you want the academics in the room today to know about how the audit will evolve in that time frame? So I want you to look at your crystal ball and tell us all what the audit's going to look like.
Sure. Do this in 2 minutes. Yeah, so I think number one, it's important that it's innovation digital. So I do think that the innovative mindset and the people, not so much the technology, are really going to make a difference. I think as we talk to faculty and professions, you know, technology is commoditized. Everybody has access to the technology, and we heard, you know, Tim talk about Alteryx and Tableau and UiPath, and there's all these others. You know, 5 years from now, they're going to be different. So I really feel strongly, very passionate about the purpose of that the profession, that the faculty and our students have right there. And I'll go back to that you know, change. There is going to be so much change right now that the best thing you can do is help your students learn how to adapt. Okay, because it is really going to be different 5 years from now in 2023 as it is today. And they're going to be very process oriented. I just had the fortune of being down at our intern conference. We have 2,000 interns come in at the end. We did a little focus group. And I can tell you that I was a little bit surprised as to how intimidated they were by the technology. And I really took a step back and said, wow, you know, think about then the onus on us to help develop that roadmap. We don't have perfect answers, but to connect with, you know, faculty, connect with the profession, and then provide this roadmap on how to help. So if I think forward, it really does come down to thinking, understanding processes, not so much accounts and CPA exam. It's really helping them think on their feet.
Yeah. I remember back when I was a senior auditor, and one of the things that the firm I was working for then talked about was being able to go in at any point in time and audit a company. So kind of the continuous audit. And anybody who's ex-Anderson remembers the business audit. And so that was part of the innovation back many years ago when I was a senior. And it's still so fruitful today to think about how could it be different? How could you walk in at a point in time and understand what a company has going on with them, and how can you go in there and audit and give assurance? Because who knows, there could be that time in the future where it's going to be almost immediate the day that you go in. And that's just overwhelming to me what we would have to do along the way in order for that to happen.
And so maybe just on the technology side, moving innovation off to the side, data is where it all starts. I think you talked about it. I mean, you can't do any of it without data. And I'm really jealous that IBM put this saying out there, but it's really good that they say you have to walk with analytics before you run with AI. That needs to be embedded in everybody in this room, and embedded in your students, and frankly, embedded in the profession. It starts with data, and that's what you need your students to be able to understand what to do, right? Get them to look at it, get them to feel different, understand the processes. I mean, that's where it all starts. You can't do automation, you can't do AI, you can't do analytics, you can't do blockchain, okay, unless you get to the data and understand it. That's where it all begins. And it's not like a special tool or special technology. It's just about, just like what you guys do in research. I mean, think about all the data that you capture, and then your job is to analyze it and come out with an outcome that maybe someone else hasn't thought of. It's the same thing with our students and our professionals now. It's actually really cool to watch.
And what you hope is that the technology today can help at least begin to do some of that basic data analysis that allows you to pull it together and then use this gray matter that we have to actually come up with insights for our clients.
Very fast.
Very fast. Very fast. So, Sara, what kind of changes is RSM driving with respect to innovation?
So I think, you'll probably hear a very similar answer from any firm that's looking at this. We have, starting at the top level, working with a strategy innovation officer across the firm. One thing I think we don't always think about when we're in an audit setting very often, but this is a profession-wide, a firm-wide issue. So when we talk about data, it's tax and consulting and audit together. We have a data pool that we can pull from to enhance things. We talk about how we can make our risk assessment process better. Well, if all of our consultants know which computer systems need patches, which ones are failing, how do our auditors know that right away? So we can pull the data from the audit files. The consultants can quickly tell us, you can run on real time. Okay, hey, this is a patch. If your client doesn't have it, you have a risk assessment issue today. Go and look at that before it gets too late. So it's pulling all that data together into this one system and acting on it. And when we talk about, we're working through, everybody has their vision. Ours is Vision 2022, is where at RSM of what's our audit of the future look like. So much of it is based on how do we change our auditors' behavior. And I completely agree with you. We can spend a lot of time playing with this tool or that tool, or and we do, figuring out which vendor do we want to go with. But at the end of the day, it's how do we have our young students or our newer professionals coming in embrace technology, but how do we not let our older or more experienced professionals overly rely on them? So I'll hear that sometimes, right? People saying, oh, well, the newer people, my kids know how to do this, so I'll just let them do it, I don't have to worry about it. No, we all do, right? There's no opt-out, and we also get feedback from the younger people saying, I had this great idea, and my partner wouldn't let me do it, my manager wouldn't let me do it. So we're trying to work through these processes to say, okay, how do we help validate, was that a brilliant idea? Is there more that can be done? Did somebody just really not understand it? And so how do we move that forward? So a lot of, I echo everything that you're saying with it's embracing change, it's being willing to think creatively, to be able to do something once and then step back and go, okay, that worked, but if I wanted to do it again, how could I do it again and have a different outcome? And that's a critical thinking mindset that we just need to embrace.
And it goes back to the mindsets and behaviors that, Laura, that you just talked about. In relation to that innovative mindset, that analytical mindset. It's not that we want people to get rid of their critical thinking skills and put it all into a bot or AI. It's the fact that there's so much more that we could be doing if we used our mindsets in a different way. And so, Laura, if you think about, tell us a little bit about Deloitte and what does the firm envision they will be, or where does the firm envision they will be in 2023 with respect to changes in the audit?
and I don't know that it's even until 2023, right? It's happening as we sit here today, but it's really about leveraging the tools and technology to take what would have otherwise been manual processes, manual in the loosest of terms, and using things like barcoding and scanning and, you know, management of data and leveraging technologies that we have to better inform the auditor, to allow them to make even more of a value impact on the organizations that we're engaged with. So it's really about, you know, I look back and I think of, I remember when, I digress for a second, but I remember when laptops came out into the profession. Yes, I'm that old. I was a child prodigy, but anyway, and doesn't line up with my earlier story, but don't audit my comment. But you know, when I look at and I remember people say, well, how this will change, and I think what's exciting is to take some of those manual, otherwise tedious activities that we did and replace them with technology, with better information and managing data, to what we were talking about earlier, but empowering someone in the audit profession to do something that is of greater challenge and greater impact and of greater value to the markets is purposeful, and something that I know that, you know, you sit there, I don't know if you ever had that experience, but I'll be sitting there with someone who's doing something at home, and they just, why would you do it that way, right? And I think, you know, to watch the excitement in the professionals about seeing new ways to do things and taking it to limits with that innovative mindset is empowering and, quite frankly, refreshing for a lot of people in the profession. So not only do they get to insights faster leveraging technologies, the journey for many people is inspiring to be a part of that arc.
I'd love to be part of that journey. Even Sarah and I were talking just a few minutes before we came up here on the panel about shared service centers, and I know all of us, the Global Six, all have some type of shared service center, and how the point is to see if you can't, you know, concentrate certain activities so that you can free up your other professionals to do different things. And how do you do that and still be cost effective, and how do you still learn and grow? But if you learn and grow, it kind of moves us back into higher education and the changes that may need to be made there, or differences in how we look at it. So Jeff, I'd like to come back to you. So what do you see as the emerging trends in the business schools? How are they keeping up with the shifting demands of the marketplace? And then I'll let you do that, and then I'll probably add on to that.
So essentially all the things that we're talking about that are trends in industry and business are trends that we have to deal with, both as providers of talent, but also in terms of how we educate. So, you know, our own industry, probably for the first time in a couple of millennia, is undergoing some significant change in terms of online education and those sorts of things. I think the best way for me to explain how at Illinois we are responding is just tell you a little bit about what we're doing in terms of the revamping of our entire undergraduate curriculum, which we hadn't changed the sort of the business core in 25 years. And I want to give a shout out, she's not here today, but many of you know Brooke Elliott, who really, before she became the chair of our accounting department, I asked her to lead this effort. And I'll tell you, with this new cohort, by the time that's coming in this fall, by the time they will have left their freshman year, they will have all been required to take a course on professional responsibility, which gets around not just, it's broader than just ethics, it gives them a global mindset and so forth. Their sophomore year, every student, regardless of their major, is going to have to take a full year of business analytics, as well as a course on business dynamics that tries to give them an integrative, comprehensive look at how a business enterprise operates, so break down the silos and a more holistic view. During their junior year, they're all going to be have a real client experience. This is going to be some heavy lifting, but we've had the country's largest student-run consulting organization within our college for a long time, so we're going to leverage that to have every student be part of a team that actually works with a real-world client on an actual project. And then their senior year is a course, essentially, I forget the long title of it, but it's essentially a global business course. So if you think about that, we've actually matched up pretty nicely to a lot of the mindsets that we hear employers are looking for, and that's no accident. I mean, we ran a pretty in-depth, rigorous process around identifying, out of all of the things that we could be teaching, what are the things that we see emerging as must-have, high-value skills for our students. And I think you saw it there with, being able to integrate a broader business acumen, focus on analytics, comfort with data to draw insights, working with clients, building up those kinds of skills. Because, it's interesting, on the one hand, we now expect everyone to be able to be comfortable with data. As you said, you can't opt out of this anymore. On the other hand, it's still going to be a person in the room who's got to figure out how to take those insights and communicate them effectively to a client. And there's really no other way to learn those skills than to work with a client. And so those are the kind of things we're focused on.
So interdisciplinary is also not an opt-out anymore. It's required.
Yeah, and that's going to be, I know the faculty in the room will be, yeah, we've heard that before. I think it really is changing. And it's not that each faculty member or each class suddenly has to become an expert at other things. We have to make sure at sort of a college level that students are having opportunities to gain that exposure. And actually what we've discovered in some ways is the most effective way to do that is either through in some of these core classes, there are going to be teams that help design the course. But it's often former practicing professionals that come in who have been out there that will actually take ownership in leading the course. So, we're hiring former partners and we're hiring former CFOs and those kinds of things to come in and actually help provide some of the guidance along with our traditional tenure system faculty.
And we're also having to look at how do we even create programs that attract even different people. So not that, I think Tim talked about his son saying, yeah, I want to go into the accounting profession, but you have to also help other people understand what we're doing as accounting professionals. So Sara, you're on your alma mater's College of Business and Public Administration Advisory Board. What changes are they making to address the changing needs of the profession?
Sure. So I'm a proud alumni of the University of North Dakota, and one of the things that the university looked at just a few years ago is the Masters of Accountancy program and the MBA program, and how do they compare and contrast? And they really sat back and said, well, a MAC program is designed to be CPA ready. So if you want your Master's in Accountancy, you can then be eligible to sit for the CPA. And when they designed it, they said we need at least 2 tracks, because we have the people who come in and know they want to take the traditional financial reporting, audit, tax type curriculum, become a CPA. And we have another group of people who already have an undergrad or who want to get an undergrad in technology, political science, something else, but make them CPA ready. So they created that second track that says, okay, if you come into us with this other undergrad, you can then, we're going to top you off with financial. So it's a very different model to think about of, okay, how do you get, once you're at your master's level, you're starting with, is it exactly principles of accounting? What is it? But you're topping off to get what you need to be CPA ready. And then that went well, but they also added a third track saying, we now have people coming who are saying, I'm a professional, I've got my undergrad in IT, I want to be able to sign audit opinions. And so, but I want to do an online course. I want to do this remote. I want to add this to a curriculum I already have. Those tend to be somewhat a little more uniquely, there's not necessarily one size fits all, because they have undergrads from different schools and things like that. But they're building into that as well to say, okay, yeah, we understand. The auditor of the future might be, they definitely need to be financially literate, they need to be CPA ready, but they might spend most of their time in information systems, most of their time in something other than pure financial statements, and so they actually redesign that program to meet all those needs.
Yeah, I think I was telling the panelists that I have a client who was the CIO of a network marketing company, and there was a shakeup at that company, and so he moved into the CFO role. So he needed to find a way very fast. How did he get the financial, I'm going to say, not because he had good financial skills, but he didn't have the financial credibility that a CPA would have. So he had to find a way to take some courses so that he was seen as credible to the private markets. So we have to find ways to be able to bring people into the fold and give them the skill sets that they need to be successful. And financial accounting is one of them, is definitely one of them. So Scott and Lora, how are your firms partnering with universities? Are you expanding these partnerships beyond the business school for new hires? for new hires into the assurance practice. So Scott, why do you want to go?
Sure, and I think, you know, as I listened to the earlier panel and this panel, there's a couple things maybe that kind of hangs all together here. So one, when you heard Tim talk about the story of his son deciding, you know, in accounting. So here's the cool thing about that, right? Accounting has become really cool. Okay, because here's the deal. No, but listen to it. We're talking about information systems. We're talking about business. We're talking about all of these different things that all of your students right now are going to have to learn. And that's not for tax, and it's not for some of the others. It's really focused on audit, okay? Because of all these different, like, no one's going to pick the perfect curriculum. Okay, there's so many different ways to draw it up, but it all comes back to the same thing. You have an opportunity to inspire your students to get really engaged in accounting and auditing. And that's when we're working with universities, we're trying to just say, listen, don't worry about getting it perfect. Okay, in 2023, it's gonna look different than it does today. And rather than even the auditor of the future, think about it more of the future of the auditor. Okay, it's kind of, hey, this is what you're going to be looking at. Make it really inspiring. Let them know they're going to develop. And we don't know, is it going to be a CIO that becomes the CFO? Is it going to be a CFO that becomes the CEO? I don't know. But what I do know, okay, is that everybody in this room, whether you're from academia or from the profession, we have a really, really interesting time right now to insert, you know, your kind of view and your feelings into the DNA of our students. Right? Digital is going to be what drives success in 5 years. You can't be a CEO. You can't be a CFO unless you're going to understand digital 10 years from now. So that's the message that we try and work with the university on. And don't get, again, so worried about a tool or this or that. It's more, guys, just understand the opportunity that exists to really inspire and change the lives of so many. And provide them, you use the word, with a purpose. Right? It's a really cool world right now.
It's exciting to know we're cool. I like this.
Well, I told
and couldn't agree more. Very well said.
I told
we all knew we were cool. I just hope more people. No.
Yeah. I told a group of incoming freshmen, I said, did you know that accounting is sexy? That's right. Every single one of them perked up and they were ready to hear whatever the presentation was. It's just the use of words. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's, no, I just, building off Scott, I would just add that, you know, different things that we're doing with academia and universities and colleges in general would be, you know, engaging in some innovative challenges to tap into the talent of the students and peek into their curiosity and their level of engagement. So we found a lot of success with some of our innovative challenges and also our true blood case studies with professors to continue to evolve the case studies for the times, to give academia opportunities to tap into that, to help build out curriculum in the future of the schools. But I think Scott said it well.
Can I just make another note? I don't know where Ira is, but he was in, there he is in the back. We were chatting over lunch about how we both think that that academia has probably overemphasized teaching of the standards historically, that what's important is that we teach people how to learn standards. We teach them how to apply standards, but actually learning the standards, I've had multiple CEOs say, look, we can teach them that, and they're changing anyway, right? So to the accounting faculty in the room, I realize, yes, they still have to pass the CPA exam and those kinds of things, but I think it's more the process and the mindsets that we develop that help them take a standard, learn how to dissect it, what it means, and apply it is much more important than learning the standard itself. And I think that's an important distinction in how we approach these things.
It's perfect. You answered, asked, and did my next question.
Oh, sorry about that.
No, I love it. Thank you.
We can take another question then.
We're humming, man. We are just humming.
At the risk of
doing it again.
Doing it again. I think at some point the profession, and I know there's already some quiet discussions going on, or not quiet, but just sort of early discussions going on around, like, does the CPA exam need to change, right? Do there need to be alternative paths to certification that test skills other than just, you know, the knowledge that's currently in it? So for example, take somebody who comes from a technology background, right? You probably want them, some of those folks, part of your audit team, should they have a way to get a professional certification, not that wouldn't include any accounting, obviously, but that rebalances that knowledge relative to the technical accounting knowledge. And I think those conversations are going to be on the horizon for a while.
Yeah, and the other thing to think about is in this horizon over the next 15 years or so, millennials are going to be in positions of leadership. I know there's lots of research that's out there. If you just look at professional services firms, what's the percent of millennials that will be in charge, that will be leaders in your firm or in our firms? And so if you think about that position of leadership in millennials, what challenges do you think it presents for public company auditing? And that could be for any of you.
Yeah, I would think of our profession historically as an apprenticeship model, right? And when you think about the millennials coming out now, and again, the previous panel referenced it, everybody's on even ground right now. And so that group, in order to apprentice them, in order to teach them, our partners, our senior leadership, others, this framework has to be established to allow them to still learn the accounting and the auditing, which for me is still, that domain is still most important. Like, how do we kind of weave them into all that and then also bring the technology along so that they do get this full view of what it means to be a leader? And you know, Jeff, the program that you talk about at Illinois just sounds fantastic to me, because you're integrating everything, right? It's not like an MIS class over here or this over there. And I think for us, we're trying to think about it the same way, is how do we integrate everything so that we pick up from where academia and faculty have stopped when they graduate, and make sure we continue that roadmap. And how do we build out all these different points? So for me, it's kind of like, wow, we have to do these things where the people coming out are probably as good or better than the people there. Meanwhile, we still have to get them to this leadership role. So I think it's a really exciting, changing time. And people that think differently, innovatively, that really think out of the box, they're the ones that are going to take this and just do it and be the leaders. It's really going to be that simple.
I think that one of the things we, often we talk about, like, audit documentation. Millennials don't know how to write. They're going to put a Snapchat in the audit documentation. How's that going to work, right? I don't think it'll go that far, but we often don't think about the fact that millennials are also going to become our clients. So we're maybe 10 years at the most away from the CFO, the CEO of the client being a millennial. And so now when we teach our auditors, we really teach them, okay, understand what your client wants. Does your client want you to, if you're in the field, do you set up a meeting twice a day? Do they want you to interrupt at will? What works for them? Well, that's all in the framework of what we know. Well, what happens when it's the millennial who says, oh, just text me? Do you text your audit committee members right now?
Yes.
Is that going to be comfortable? Yes, some people do, right? Is that going to be comfortable? How do we make that change? What does that feel like? Are you friends? I'm going to age myself here because I still am a Facebook person, right? I do have Snapchat, which I'm not good at, but I haven't done Instagram yet. I'm not quite there. But are you Facebook friends with your audit committee chair? Should you be? Should you be? You're following them on Twitter, probably, right? That's not so crazy. But how does this change when it's not just us changing internally, but changing how we have that relationship with our clients? Does it blur independence if you kind of know everything they did on their whole vacation because they're that person that, every single day you know what they ate? Does that matter? I think there's just a lot for us to think about in how we evolve as a whole profession. And it's not just us, it's not just the colleges, it's not just academia, it's us and our clients evolving together.
Makes me want to put my cell phone away.
I think it's important too that we continue through all the technological changes, is to make sure that the students coming out of school now, and that we all remember that people all are and always will be at the heart of an audit. Yeah. And don't want that message to be lost. Now, those that are in the profession or have been academia for a long time, we know that. But the messaging could get lost if not paused and emphasized, because what does it mean to me if I'm a student graduating from school, and to remind them and make sure, or not remind them, make sure that we're rooted in professional skepticism and professional judgment will never be replaced by machines or technology. And the value they bring, and really making sure that's anchored in, because again, those of us in the room, we know that, but if I was graduating right now, I might lose that in the messaging.
They're a little intimidated, yeah, and just, I also think it's really important to kind of build on the story that we're also in a unique you know, kind of place or this precipice of such fast change. But if you fast forward 5 or 10, 15 years to our leaders, I'm not sure that the STEM that we talk about now and all of these, that skill set won't already have been built in, okay, to the people. Are we just in a transition period right now? Or are we really gonna have all of these different, you know, types of people coming into the industry? I mean, I can see technologies that we're deploying right now where it's almost as easy for a staff accountant to figure out how to move data around as it is an engineer. And that's today. And that's where technology goes. It just gets simpler and simpler and easier. So I think everybody also has to stop and not get too much caught up in the hype of where everything's going, saying, wait a minute, technology changes too. Our people, our millennials, our generation, they're gonna grow up with it. It is, I just could not agree with you more. It is gonna come down to the person and the domain and how they think and what they know that's gonna ultimately make the difference in being an auditor. It's very passionate about that.
When it really changes that composition of the engagement team, what is that going to look like in the future? You've got audit innovation, you've got technology, you've got, so what happens to our engagement team? We don't lose the people, it's just what will they be doing? So Scott, if you think about non-accounting majors integrated into the audit team, what do you think about that? What do you think it'll do?
Yeah, just to kind of pick up on that. So I do think, you know, the manual tasks, the things that aren't quite as important, those will be greatly minimized. Okay, I do think technology like automation, when you get data and analytics, and really AI is just kind of like another level of automation, that is going to take away a lot of time of what we do. So the challenge is, okay, what are we going to do with that time other than, you know, give fees back to our clients? So, well, you know, all right, that's not a good commercial model. So, but what are we going to really do there? And I do think that's where we have to start thinking about our profession, is what are the different types of offerings that are going to be out there? What are the different types of skills? You know, the composition will change. You know, is it going to be a lot fewer, a lot more partners or staff? I'm not really sure, but I do know they're going to be doing way more interesting things. Right? If you're not sitting in Excel for 5 years, but the second you walk in, you're actually getting data and analyzing it, think about how that accelerates, right, the learning and the application of that in our people. And then how that just accelerates everything that our people can do. So I don't know what the composition is going to look like. I'm not sure it's going to be that different, but I do know they're going to be doing different types of things, much more strategic business thinking than just, you know, working in Excel.
If I could make an observation, I mean, I think one of the things that I'm observing is the exact same skills that the profession is looking for is what every industry and every occupation is looking for, right? And so as a result, it's going to be really interesting to see what happens to, I mean, sort of as an economist that sometimes thinks about issues around income distribution and so forth, I think we're going to continue to see a spread there. But in terms of the industry, I think you're going to find that the external competitive pressure to grab people out of the industry, because you are known as a place that invests in its people, right?
That's right.
Yeah, it's already.
I mean, I'm not surprised, and I think that's going to accelerate. I think the poaching of partners from firms is going to go up.
Yeah, it's today. I mean, think about our markets. We're all in different markets, and the competition for talent is fierce. And I'll capitalize it, bold it, underscore it. It's just absolutely fierce. So, Lora, if you think about that as a talent leader, what are the qualities that you think are going to be make someone a successful senior manager or engagement manager when you think about where we are today?
You know, the headlines I think of are, you know, the professional skepticism, someone that is a lifelong learner, they're agile, they're a good problem solver, they've got the innovative mindset. I think those are the headlines, that they're resilient. I think those are some of the characteristics that would help someone be successful at those levels.
I wasn't expecting a different answer than your introduction.
I have to be connected to the...
She's right, though.
But she is right, exactly. I mean, we see it every day. We absolutely see it every day. Oops, now that everything turned upside down. So, Sara, in all of our careers, I think we've taken for granted that public company auditing is a basic pyramid model that Scott was alluding to earlier. and we hire a large number of first years with the expectation that over time, you know, they're going to be weeded out and you're going to be left with this beautiful 1 to 4 to 5 to 7 to 8, and it'll all be perfect and life will go on. So what do you think is going to happen? What do you think those first years could look like now as we move forward?
You know, I think that we are all evaluating how do we make a model that looks different. So if we hire fewer first years, how do we retain them more? How do we keep people engaged in the profession more? How do you still keep changing what people are doing, even if they're not reducing in numbers? But one of the things that I really think about when we're talking about that audit of the future and saying, yeah, they need to come in and they need to already have a baseline of skepticism, they need to already know how to do an audit, they need to do all this data analytics. I think there's a huge potential that if we don't work really closely with academia, we could have an expectation gap. And so we might have students, if you guys get ahead of us and you're teaching all this data analytics and the students come in and you're like, okay, now we need you to do all that, but actually we also still need to vouch some things over here. I need you to test some controls over here. Now I'm going, well, that's not cool. Like, that's not what I wanted to do. That's not sexy. You told me accounting was sexy, And so we need to make sure that as we're developing these people, that we're also then giving them the opportunities to be more creative, to be more forward thinking, and have that be part of everything that we do. But I think we'll have to look at our model changing. I think that part of it is going to be, do we have the right people? So I could use cryptocurrency as an example. It's something that we're all enjoying the fun of. And yeah, you need a really good accounting person to figure out how accounting works. As we're working through it, at least within our firm, we are very closely reliant on our consultants. The people in our consulting practice who are the digital currency people, they know more about how this actually works than any of our auditors do yet. And the valuation teams are going, there's no model for how do you value something that's traded on 2 different exchanges on the same day for vastly different amounts of money. That just didn't exist in valuation before a year ago, right? And so we bring all these different people together into the one model. So how does that look in a pyramid? That's not a very good pyramid, right? It's kind of maybe a matrix now. But I think what we'll see is evolving all these different players. Might we have more kind of what we call experienced hire, more people coming and going, saying, okay, I'm going to go spend some time in this place. I'm going to maybe work in the investment banking for a few years, and then I'm going to come back, and then I'm going to do this. Yeah, we're going to need to be a little bit more nimble with that. But if we, maybe 2022, but maybe 23, maybe it's longer, but to think about, okay, if the auditing profession isn't taking all these people out of school and training them, who does? I mean, do the companies change so that they have more of a hiring out of college model? Not all of them do yet. They really often rely on us to do that for them and getting in there. So I think it's a profession-wide change, but the pyramid probably won't be maybe it's a hexagon. I don't know.
I don't know. Right now we still talk about pyramids, and we all know that the pyramid is not the firm of the future.
Right.
But so maybe we just need to be creative and maybe do some research and just figure out what the firm of the future is going to look like. Yeah. But we started today with a presentation on mindsets, behaviors, and skills. And so Jeff, I'd kind of like to go to you for this one. How can professors nurture these important traits in their students? If the profession is seeking people with strong critical thinking skills, someone that can critically assess audit evidence, what can be done in the classroom to help hone those skills?
Well, far be it for a dean to tell a faculty member how to teach their class. Faculty really are amazingly good at what they do. So I won't really give advice. I'll just make some observations about what I've seen, which is, one of the trends of the last 5 to 10 years is as online education has gotten much more effective and people have come to learn what can be done better in a face-to-face setting and what can be done better online. One of the things that many of us have concluded is that the basic content delivery is actually often done best with a very well planned out online thing. You video it ahead of time, you've really, you've storyboarded it out, you've worked with instructional designers, and you deliver that content in a way that now you don't have to spend your class time doing that. So now you can put that out there. Maybe you don't even need a textbook anymore. And so we'll use what's called a blended or a flipped classroom model, where you prepare that ahead of time, the content delivery is done outside of class, and then you still meet with the students. But now you've completely changed how you use that time with the students. And that's when you're now using it to really work through cases, to force them to have those interactions, to do simulations, to have debates, whatever the case might be. And I think being really thoughtful about how you can use that time that you have the students together is, I think, more important than it's ever been. You know, when I started teaching, you know, the standard model was you went in, and at the time I was using overhead transparencies, and eventually it turned into PowerPoint presentations. The last couple times I taught before I became dean, I didn't do any of that anymore. All the videos were out there online, and I came in, and every day was something a little different that was built around some skill or some learning type that I wanted to take advantage of. And that's what, if you're not already doing that, that does seem, there's a lot of mounting evidence that that's a very effective way to teach, and I would encourage you to look at it.
I think you're seeing that even in the public accounting firms, how we actually do training. You know, you still have your webcast, you still have the self-studies and the face-to-face, but you're trying to find other ways to actually make the learning real, so that they walk away saying, I can apply this, versus I read this and I don't know what I'm going to do. So as we get to our Q&A session, maybe 15 seconds apiece, if you wanted to say something that you hadn't said, or if you wanted to say something about lifelong learning or how we learn, I'll give you freedom for those three things, 15 to 20 seconds apiece.
All right, so I'd say the one word that I would use is collaboration. Okay, I feel between the, you know, the schools, the profession, the regulators, you know, industry as a whole, it is just so important right now to just embrace, bring everybody and say, listen, we all have the same goals, and from industry down to audit firms, down to the individual, if we talk about competitive or not, you know, people that you're training are going to be the leaders of the future. So collaborating and make sure we're staying very close together is probably the most important thing to me.
So I guess on the topic of learning, you know, we're doing the same with the blended learning in our curriculum, looking at nano learnings. How do we have, you know, within our audit methodology, if you're in a work paper, how do you have just the link to launch your 5-minute video on how to do sampling if you forgot, or how does it take you directly where you need to go? And it was, you know, we've been working on a lot of this. I was feeling fairly good about the plans we have to have all this built out in the next few years. And I was sitting in my daughter's room yesterday talking to her. She's my middle, she's 13. And we're going to go to a concert in a couple weeks, and I said, okay, how old is Taylor Swift? And I'm kind of problem solving in my mind, and she goes, hey Alexa, how old is Taylor Swift? Not kidding. And then Taylor Swift is 28. She was born on and was this the answer you were looking for? And I was like, it just kind of paused me to go, okay, how do we think bigger? So I'm excited that, yeah, I mean, to me, it would be really cool and revolutionary if I was in the middle of my sampling form and I couldn't remember what trial misstatement meant anymore, to just click on it and it would tell me. To my daughter, she's just expecting that Alexa, you know, she can talk to her computer. Why can't I talk to it? Why can't it tell me things? So I think it's exciting. It's exciting for us to be learning and changing together, but just never forget every moment that we have, whether we're at work, whether we're at home. They're just these more bits of information that helps us understand how to create that audit of the future.
Fantastic.
Say, hey Alexa, what should I say?
Yeah, exactly.
No, from a higher ed perspective, I'd say I'm actually incredibly optimistic about what all this means for higher education, at least for schools that are really thinking ahead and innovating in their curriculum and in the delivery models and so forth. Because I think what we're seeing is that all of this technology, the kind of things that are going to be replaced first, is sort of the less fun, less cool, less sexy, whatever word you want to use, stuff, the boring stuff. And what the leaders of the future and the people who are going to be very successful are going to be relying on is translating those insights and then bringing them into the context of human interaction and decision making and strategy. That's a pretty high level of, you know, on the cognitive scale. Those are pretty high level skills, and that's what universities are good at teaching people to do. So, you know, it does require we adapt and change. It gets us all a little bit out of our comfort zone, but I think it's a very promising sign for the role of universities in higher education.
Yeah, I think the only thing I'd add is I think when you pull the thread through and you think of the words that just keep popping in my mind is experiences and exposure. And the experiences and the exposure that one entering this it's school and then in the profession is quite exciting. And that we look at it through that lens to understand how do we create experiences and exposure to prepare and grow leaders, but also to attract people to the profession and make sure that it stays and remains attractive through that lens while we're evolving. And I think that's important.
Great, thank you. Well, I'd love to just thank my panelists. Thank you so much for being part of this. And I believe that there's a couple mics around, so I know that there's time for question, and I just want to give you my 10-second. I just think that events like today, where we have the chance to have dialogue and we get to work together, collaborate, identify, and figure out how do we motivate and excite and encourage our people, whether they're coming right out of school or they're in our own firms, or they're even our faculty. What do we do to create a different environment?
All right, so let's see, it's on. Jeff, so you were talking about how you feel like the CPA exam, you know, the discussions that are being had about testing other things, which are going on for sure. I mean, they're talking about data analytics and skepticism and all of that. But then, you know, Scott, you were talking about how technology changes constantly, how the tools that are being used aren't going to be used in a couple years. So if you were going to design a CPA exam for the CPA of the future, what would you put on it? It can be any.
That's probably the only non-CPA in the room. I'm not sure I should answer that. But what I will say is I'm going to answer a slightly broader question, but then I'd love to hear what everyone else has to say, which is I think the whole issue of credentialing is coming under question, right? So in higher ed, we think about this from the standpoint of degrees being sort of unbundled, right? So we're in a partnership with Coursera to provide an online degree. You can now get your MBA from University of Illinois for only $22,000 online. But what that has led to is really interesting discussions of does somebody really need the MBA? Or could somebody come and learn accounting from Illinois and go take some leadership courses at Harvard and take some finance classes at Wharton and essentially just bundle their own? And what level, how do we certify that they've actually learned something? And how do we rebundle that? And I think those are the kind of questions higher ed is going to have to grapple with. So, you know, from the perspective of the CPA, being the one person in the room who's never taken it, I would say the question is not so much what content should be on the exam, but is the exam the right way to think about it?
Yeah, I would echo what you said, is that, you know, when 25 years ago, you know, you didn't have all this information at your fingertips. You had to know the rules, you had to know the standards, you had to memorize this, you had to memorize that. Not anymore, that's right there. So now it's about, you said, how do I think about the standard? How do I think about this? How do I think? So it'll be interesting to see how the CPA exam thinks about changing, but it's got to kind of just progress, right, with everything. It has to be based on what the skills of our people are going to be based on, which is rapidly changing. It's a tough thing to change and keep up.
So ideally, the CPA exam ought to have this mindset behaviors document to think about what are those questions, are they even linked to any of those mindsets, those skill sets that we're trying to teach our people, the behaviors that we want our people to have in relation to doing professional auditing work.
Yeah. Really out of the box idea. Instead of asking them about a particular standard, you make up a standard that's not even real and ask them to apply it on the spot to see how they think, right? How they analyze the standard and apply it in a case. Now that'd be hard to grade, but in a sense, that's the skill set.
It's happened what they said with revenue rec, lease. I mean, it's all that stuff right now. That's right. And it all has to come back to being the whole point of what's here, the Center of Audit Quality. It has to come back to the quality of the work that we perform. I mean, it just has to. And if people feel that the quality of what we're doing is starting to dissipate because we're not having our people learn the right things, well, then it's up to the industry, profession, everyone to say, wait a minute, guys, we need to make sure we're testing our people and our people coming out with the right skill sets. I mean, it all comes down to quality.
because it's not a checklist. It just is not a checklist.
I want to follow up on that comment and Jeff's note of optimism, if I could. Some of us have been thinking about this question of comparative advantage of academia versus the comparative advantage of the accounting firms and business organizations generally. The former I would characterize as a comparative advantage of education, whereas the latter, the term training, is often used. After listening to the panel today, it's become clear to me that that question is probably as important, if not more so today, than it's ever been. And so I want to thank the panel for helping me to get to that point, but also it's a challenge to everybody. We've got a small amount of time with the young people when they come into the academy, and we need to be sure that we are using that optimally. Some of that is flipping the classroom, as Jeff mentioned, but it's more fundamental than that. That's a mechanism for achieving learning objectives. The question is, what learning objectives are we targeting? Thank you.
Right. Thank you. So as we wrap this up again, Scott, Sara, Jeff, and Laura, thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you very much.